This is why when you go on a diet and when you want to lose weight, you really just cannot eat processed food. You have to eat real food that you've prepared yourself.
From the Weston A. Price Foundation, welcome to the Wise Traditions podcast for wise traditions in food, farming, and the healing arts. We are your source for scientific knowledge and traditional wisdom to help you achieve optimal health.
Hey, Hilda here. The secret saboteur of our diets. The reason for narrow jaws and facial structure. Why we may need to eliminate garlic from our diets for a time. This is episode 385, and our guest today is Sally Fallon Morell, the president of the Weston A. Price Foundation. She is a prolific author, a fervent advocate for real food, raw milk, and healthy living, according to ancestral wisdom. Today, Sally discusses topics covered in our Summer 2022 Wise Traditions Journal. The topics run the gamut from those I mentioned at the top to how to protect your children from sunburn without sunscreen, and the wonders of cholesterol for growing babies. Yes, cholesterol. Yep, we talk about just about everything under the sun, with the exception of COVID. Thank goodness. Before we dive into the conversation, I want to invite you to the Wise Traditions Conference coming up this October. It is the conference that nourishes in every way. Sally, of course, will be there, along with old friends like Dr. Andrew Kaufman and Dr. Tom Cowan, and new friends like Tommy John and Catherine Austin Fitz. Plus, we just get to connect together as friends and enjoy nourishing meals together. I plan on being there too. Join me. It's October 21st to the 23rd in Knoxville, Tennessee. There's still time to register. Go to wisetraditions.org and secure your spot today. And today's episode is also brought to you in part by Branch Basics, helping you replace your cleaning supplies with a non-toxic formula. Branch Basics offers fragrance-free, plant and mineral-based, free of harmful preservatives, biodegradable, non-GMO, gluten and tree nut-free, and products that are not tested on animals. These are non-toxic cleaners, if you get the picture, and they are extremely important. And unfortunately, our environment inside and outside the home is loaded with harmful chemicals that can lead to an array of hormonal symptoms. They are toxins called endocrine-disrupting chemicals, and they're found just about everywhere. They throw our bodies out of whack with a myriad of unpleasant symptoms to follow. That's why our family uses Branch Basics. They have a simple one-concentrate model that is used for all kinds of cleaning in the home. You get 5 reusable bottles to reduce waste, which you can fill with concentrate and water that covers all kinds of all-purpose cleaning. You can have streak-free bottles, 3 bathroom bottles, 3 foaming wash bottles, and you can do your laundry with this stuff too. It's so simple to get started. I just used some of both products, the Branch Basics Concentrate and the Oxygen Boost, on a carpet stain today, and it worked like a charm. And there are no more chemicals smelling up our house and causing toxic issues. So go to branchbasics.com to order your home cleaning products today and use the code WISE, which is good for 15% off all starter kits, with the exception of the trial kit. I'll make it easy for you and put a link in the show description. This is Holistic Hilda, and you're listening to Wise Traditions. Welcome to Wise Traditions, Sally.
Hi, Hilda. Nice to be back. Thank you.
I love talking with you. And it's been a little bit since we've covered one of our journals.
That's right.
We took kind of a little break, but now we're back. And tell us why this one in particular is special.
Okay. So we got a letter from someone saying, I'm just sick and tired. Wasn't exactly what they said. I'm tired of all this stuff about COVID and you've strayed from your message. And I wrote back and said, well, I actually agree with you. We had to cover COVID because it was the health issue of the moment. There's no way we could not do that. But this issue has no major articles on COVID, I'm glad to say. And we're getting back to our core of nutrition and health.
Fantastic.
And our lead article is very interesting. But first, I just want to talk about a couple caustic commentaries.
Let's do it.
And the caustic commentaries were all quite interesting, I thought, in this issue. But one was about malocclusion, crooked teeth, overbites, underbites. And there's all these theories out there that it's hard food or thumb sucking or whatever.
Exactly.
But this was a study that found that a large portion of people with narrow jaws had vitamin D deficiency.
Really?
Yes, and that they likened the narrow jaw to a type of rickets. And that is a really good way of thinking about it. These jaws the bones are a little bit soft and they can't be broad a way a good hard bone can be. The one warning I have about first of all, I think this is a tremendous step forward for conventional scientists to be looking at the fat-soluble vitamins. The warning I have is that people are going to be taking vitamin D pills. And
I know.
Yeah. So they need all 3 fat-soluble vitamins together in the food, because when you take vitamin D by itself, you create an imbalance and a deficiency in vitamins A and K.
And I feel like we've said this so many times, but people are like, oh, vitamin D, I'll pop some pills, but they don't understand that the food works together. These vitamins work together in concert in food.
Well, I just talked to a person who's very dear to me, and she had been prescribed 10,000 IU per day of vitamin D by her doctor. She's a cancer survivor, and she said she was just so exhausted all the time. So I said, well, get off the D, get on cod liver oil instead, and see if that helps. But I was a little bit shocked that she'd been given so much vitamin D. I think conventional doctors, God bless them, they're trying to overcome their education and their surroundings and the peer pressure. And so the very first thing they go to is something like a vitamin D supplement. And unfortunately, it's like taking 1 step forward and 2 steps backwards.
Yes.
Because it's very counterproductive.
And remind us the foods that are rich in vitamin D. You already mentioned cod liver oil, which of course Dr. Price said was a food and not a supplement. Yeah. What other sources can we get from our
animal fats. So butter, lard, poultry fats, and then liver of pigs and birds. The liver of ruminants is very high in vitamin A. And that's why we always recommend cooking it in lard, so they have that balance of A and D.
Oh, Thank you for that reminder. And of course, this food is so amazing. Let's talk about the lead article that you were excited about.
So this was a very interesting article, and I've gotten feedback that's very similar to my reaction when I heard the talk given by Greg Nye at our conference on the devil in the garlic, and he's written a book about this too. And he's worked with Stephanie Seneff. So why would garlic, which we think of as a healthy food, have problems? Well, it's all about sulfur metabolism. We need sulfate in our body, and that's a form of sulfur with 4 oxygen added to it. Okay, but there's other forms of sulfur. And apparently, if you overdose in sulfur, you block the pathways in your body that you need to produce sulfate. And we need sulfate for mucous membranes. We need sulfate for hormone production. We need sulfate for lots of things.
Okay, I know there's sulfur in garlic, and that's good for us, but there's some problem with garlic?
Yes, there could be. And he's found in his practice that garlic is the most problematic food for disrupting our sulfur pathways. It's not that we don't need sulfur. Of course, we need sulfur. In fact, he points out we need a lot more sulfur than most of the other elements. We really need a lot of sulfur.
So what's the part that's problematic?
Well, let me just also say the other really problematic practice is all this kale and rough leafy greens that are high in sulfur, and that we're eating in smoothies and chips and things to excess. And that can also disrupt the sulfur pathways. What happens when we don't make enough sulfate? And we really need sulfate for lots of things. Well, the body has a backup plan. It has several backup plans. The first thing it does is have a proliferation of sulfur-producing bacteria, which is, a lot of flatulence and digestive problems. That's what comes first. And that's just one of the body's attempts to get the pathways right again. The second thing is that we produce a lot of inflammation, because inflammation helps produce sulfate. The third thing the body does is produce a lot of mucus, because mucus helps us get on those pathways. Mucus has sulfate in it. And if those 3 don't work, the last thing the body does is create tumors, because tumors produce sulfate.
This is so shocking, Sally.
I know. It's like the symptom as the cure. The symptom as the cure. And it gives you such respect for how the body acts to get what it needs.
So does Greg offer solutions about how to manage this?
Yes, very good question.
Because I love garlic, and this is really bringing me down.
It's funny because I've never liked garlic very much.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, I've never liked it very much. And when I eat garlic, I don't feel very well after I eat garlic. So this really kind of struck me, this article. And it's like the 4 things that really are people complaining about: digestive disorders, inflammation, mucus, and tumors.
Yes.
And, the tumors is the last and most serious. So he has a protocol that he uses, and it's first to go on a low sulfur diet for about 2 weeks. And unfortunately, that means reducing a lot of meat. But there are certain meats you can eat. You can eat fish and you can use butter. So you can still follow our principles, but no garlic, no onions, no kale, no chard, none of those really high sulfur foods.
Mm-hmm.
And you take molybdenum, which is necessary for one of these enzymes that converts to sulfate. And the last thing you do, there's other things too, but the last important thing you do is Epsom salts baths.
Oh.
Because Epsom salts is magnesium sulfate. It's exactly what you need is the sulfate. And this is why they're so healing to things like inflammation and mucus, and even for cancer patients. So I would, now anyone with cancer, I would recommend doing this protocol, cutting back on the high sulfur foods just for a short while and doing the Epsom salts baths.
Now, what if you're not feeling particularly symptomatic? Is this still possibly problematic? Like, what if you don't have inflammation and a lot of mucus and digestive issues? Right.
Then you don't have to worry about it.
Okay.
You're doing fine. But I think it's good to be aware of the fact that overconsumption of things like garlic and kale and even onions could lead to problems.
Oh, gosh. All right. I'm going to have to look at my diet a little more closely. but just pay attention.
But, I was just blown away when I read the transcript of his talk, because this is something that Tom Cowan and I have been saying for many years, that when you have a fever, that's the body's therapy. The symptom is the therapy. And here he was giving all these things that people complain about, and they're really therapies. They're the body's therapy. They're not there to be welcomed as a way of getting your body to be back in balance.
I see what you're saying. It's that the body is responding appropriately.
Yes.
We get mad at it. Like, why are you inflamed?
This is the sickness, but it's actually the therapy.
I see. Okay. All right. So we'll have people look into that. By the way, I will make a little segue here just to say, if you want to get your hands on a journal, all you have to do is become a member. And for podcast listeners, it's only $30 a year. I get blown away every time I say that, because I'm like, I know gym memberships that are $30 a class, actually. So $30 a year, and you use the code POD10, and then you get the journal, and you're supporting our work of education, research, and activism, of course. But now let's get to another article.
So the next article is about MSG. It's called Getting to the Root of Obesity. And it's by Adrian Samuels, PhD. And Adrian was married to Jack Samuels, the late Jack Samuels. And Jack was the one who put Mary, Enig, and myself onto MSG because he was extremely sensitive to it. So much so that he had to quit his job. He was a hospital administrator because he couldn't eat out anymore. He would pass out because he was so sensitive to the MSG.
But just to be clear, he didn't put you on MSG, but he alerted you.
He alerted us to.
Okay.
He put us on to MSG.
Okay, I got you.
So Adrian has carried on his work, and she still keeps up his website. And it's about what MSG does to the hypothalamus in the body and just affects the body's ability to handle food and makes a lot of people vulnerable to weight gain, even if they're not eating more.
Interesting. Now, MSG is used by the industry as a flavor enhancer.
Right. It gives us the umami taste. And for most people, there's nothing wrong with that taste in natural foods. But when it's added to foods, processed foods, it gives a fake umami taste. And it seems to predispose to weight gain, especially if you've started this very young. If it could be in baby food, for example. It's actually in formula because MSG is in powdered milk.
Oh,
powdered milk. So
I was going to ask you what foods it's found in.
So starting a baby on formula or, powdered milk or processed food is really making them vulnerable to weight gain. And as a sidebar, we put in a description of a study that was done in China because the MSG industry says, oh, well, it's just because they're eating processed food. It has nothing to do with the MSG. Okay? Of course, the MSG is put in the processed food to make it addictive and to make you eat more and so forth.
Absolutely.
But this was a study in China comparing two groups of people, one group that did not use MSG in their cooking and the other group that did use MSG in their cooking. And neither of these groups ate processed foods. It was all home cooking. And the group that added MSG to their food was heavier.
Interesting.
Yes, they were eating kind of the same things, about the same amount of calories, but they were overweight when they added MSG to the food.
Wow. So this is like a secret thing that's sabotaging people's health that they're
Absolutely.
not even aware of.
Right. And this is why when you go on a diet and when you want to lose weight, you really just cannot eat processed food. You have to eat real food that you've prepared yourself and you know all the ingredients.
And by the way, everything that we buy in boxes and bags, I've come to discover now, you can actually make. Like
Yes.
you can get tortillas that are from nixtamalized corn
Yes.
and make them into chips.
Yes,
right?
absolutely. I do it all the time.
Fried in lard.
Yes, yeah, the way they're supposed to be.
Tastes so much
That's right.
better too.
Yes. So, I mean, what is it that you can make French fries? I make French fries in the oven with duck fat.
Yes.
It's so easy.
And it tastes so much
And
better.
they're delicious, right?
Wow.
So all of these things, you can make hamburgers with pickles and French fries and buns and everything.
Make a shake with raw milk.
Yes, right.
Now we're
right.
going strong, Sally. I love it. Coming up, Sally highlights the dangers of sunscreen, including its estrogenic and testosterone blocking effects. Plus, she mentions the importance of cholesterol for growing babies. And now, a big thank you to our sponsors, Paleo Valley. I've told you a million times how much I love this company. They do things right, and their beef sticks are beyond par. They are naturally fermented without all the usual stuff that you'll find in beef sticks or beef jerky if you just go to the gasoline shop mart or whatever it is. And they support 100% American-based regenerative farms. So eat these beef sticks when you're on the go or when you're home and you're just craving a little something something. Go to paleovalley.com to check out their beef stick line and their many other products. And use the code WISE for 15% off at checkout. That's paleovalley.com and the code word WISE. And Optimal Carnivore. Brain Nourish is the revolutionary new product that they are offering at Optimal Carnivore. They have combined grass-fed beef brain and lion's mane mushrooms in a groundbreaking formula designed to help you have your brain firing on all cylinders for focus, elevated mood, improved memory, greater clarity, and enhanced creativity. The beef brain is sourced from the highest quality regenerative farms in New Zealand, and the lion's mane is 100% real mushrooms, organic fruiting bodies which are rigorously tested for active compounds. So go to amazon.com/optimalcarnivore to check out their products, their grass-fed organ complex that contains 9 organs, a grass-fed liver product, and the new Brain Nourish. And use the code Weston10 to receive 10% off all products. Again, that's amazon.com/optimalcarnivore and the code Weston10. This is Holistic Hilda, and you're listening to Wise Traditions. Okay, I'm really excited about this next article. Anybody who knows me knows I'm big into the sun.
Well, this is about sunscreen by Elizabeth Plourde, and she's written for us before on this subject, but I think it is so important that we repeat, and she has a lot of new information here. So everybody's using sunscreen. I've even seen moms put it on their children in the winter.
Several times a day.
Yes. And so we've made an enemy of the sun, just like we've made an enemy of cholesterol and saturated fats and raw milk and all that. First of all, the sunscreen does not protect you from melanoma. Melanoma rates have gone way up since people started using sunscreen. But the really serious thing is that it's estrogenic. And the skin does absorb these estrogens. And some of these sunscreens contain not only estrogens, but testosterone blockers. So this is not a good thing for your growing children, especially if you want to have grandchildren. You want the children to express their masculinity or their femininity, and the sunscreens are going to make that more difficult.
Huge hormone disruption. Yes, I actually interviewed Elizabeth for an episode, and I think we called it, is it the sun to blame or is it the sunscreen? Because you would think we're all following doctor's orders and putting on a little sunscreen, you'd think the incidence of skin cancer would go down, but instead it's going up. So that must mean that sunscreen isn't working, or
it's worse. It makes you vulnerable.
Absolutely. It's making things worse.
Right. So what do you put on your skin? Well, first of all, I think a lot of protecting your skin has to do with your diet. You don't want to eat any industrial seed oils, no polyunsaturated oils, because they get incorporated into your cells, and then your cells don't work right and are vulnerable to burning. But if you're eating a lot of saturated fats, you'll be a lot safer in the sun. Doesn't mean that fair people won't burn, and you have to build up slowly. And I think another great thing you can put on your skin is coconut oil.
Thank you for saying that. Now, I think she also recommends a diet high in antioxidants. Is that right?
Possibly, yes. So there's your fruits and vegetables and things like that. Yeah.
Going back to what you were saying about burning, that's actually the skin's warning system.
Yes.
To tell you, get out of the sun or wear long sleeves or something. And instead we try to get away from that so we can be in the sun for hours, and maybe our bodies need a break now and then.
And also, it is a myth that non-industrialized people, so-called primitive people, spend a lot of time in the sun. They were not so foolish as to work out in the bright sun. They went in the shade at midday and slept or talked or gossiped or ate or whatever. They did their work in the morning and the evening, not in the bright noonday sun.
That's such a good point. I have a friend who was in Kenya one time, and she and her father and sister were just, sweating. They were in the sweltering sun, and then they looked around and noticed that all the indigenous people were in the shade.
Yes, right.
And they were like, we're being so foolish right now.
They say mad dogs and Englishmen. Only mad dogs and Englishmen went out in the sun. So, and of course the colonialists accused the native people of being lazy, because they were wise. They didn't work in the bright sun. It's just, you can get heat stroke, you can lose too much salt. And by the way, that's another thing I've really become aware of. A lot of people are trying to do low salt diets in this heat, and you need more salt when it's hot. So,
wow, to hold on to your water.
Yes, exactly. And you're giving up salt when you sweat. So you need more salt. And I put a pinch of salt in my water, especially in the summer.
So smart.
Yeah. So I'll just go to one other article. A lot of good articles in this issue. But I did an article for a campaign for real milk, and it's about animal formula. So when you give cows what they call milk replacer, and it's shocking, that's what's done in the dairy industry. They don't let the cows nurse.
Oh.
They don't give them their mother's milk. They give them this thing called formula, as they call it, milk replacer. And I happened to look at a bag of milk replacer. We were in a feed store. The third ingredient in milk replacer is animal fat. That's what it says, animal fat. That's ingredient number 3. Because these animals will not grow without animal fat. There's no animal fat in human formula. It's skim milk and vegetable oils.
Oh.
Now, what's in the animal fat that these babies need? Well, vitamins, but the main thing is cholesterol.
I knew you were going to say that. Cholesterol.
So animal babies get cholesterol because they need it to grow their brains, their nervous system, their digestive tracts. They need cholesterol for hormone creation. Human babies are not getting the cholesterol they need when they are given formula.
Now, cholesterol does come in mother's milk, right?
Mother's milk is very rich in cholesterol and has special enzymes to ensure that the baby absorbs 100% of that cholesterol. That's true of cow's milk, goat's milk, sheep milk, camel milk. They're all high in cholesterol, and they all have these enzymes to ensure that the infant absorbs it. And this is why we're so insistent on raw milk for babies if they can't get mother's milk, and not formula.
But when they were coming up with a recipe for commercial baby formula, didn't they try to replicate mother's milk? How could they have missed this ingredient?
You would think, but of course they just define fat as anything, as an oil, see?
Oh.
Years ago, Mary Enig was an expert witness at a case on baby formula, and a woman told her, who worked in the formula industry, she took her aside, she said, "We know there should be cholesterol in the formula, but we are not allowed to put it there because of all the anti-cholesterol propaganda." So why are our babies, our children, having lowered IQ, learning disabilities, problems concentrating, it's because they are not getting the cholesterol they need during these critical development periods.
And the irony of all ironies to me is that when they're giving the calves the milk replacement, they're giving them exactly what they know they need.
Yes, they know that this is needed for the animals to grow right. But you see, there's no money in sick animals, but there's a lot of money in sick children. Also, the dairy industry, which is probably the most corrupt industry in the world, they want to make the maximum profit on the milk. And the maximum profit on the butterfat portion of the milk comes if they put it in ice cream. So why waste this precious butterfat on growing children or on school children? So they give skim milk to the babies, skim milk to the infants, skim milk to the school children, because they don't make a lot of money on the butterfat compared to when they put it in the ice cream.
Well, I'm so grateful you're getting this information out. And of course, recently, for folks who want more on the problems with commercial formula, they can listen to the episode that we just published a few weeks ago.
Yes.
So
yes.
Thank you for getting this out.
In fact, our page on the homemade formula is based on raw whole milk. Had a 1,000% increase in traffic since the formula shortage came
Wow.
along.
So there's a silver lining for folks looking for alternatives. That's
Yes.
awesome.
Yes.
So Sally, I know we're both going to be at the conference in October. I cannot wait.
Yeah.
Can you give us a little preview of some of the things we might see or hear there?
Well, we're always excited about our conference, but I'm especially excited about this one. We have a full slate of speakers. We have some important returns. Tom Cowan will be there, and he's such a popular speaker. So he'll be there, and Natasha Campbell McBride will be there. Our keynote speaker is Catherine Austin Fitz, who has been writing about the financial system and has a very interesting take on why we shouldn't vaccinate our children, which she will be speaking at the awards banquet. Bill Schindler is going to be a speaker. He runs the food lab over on the Eastern Shore. Another talk I'm really looking forward to is Christine Muldoon's. She's a board member, and she's speaking on picky eaters. And this is something that a lot of parents have to face and deal with, is picky eaters.
Oh, yeah. That's a problem for a lot of young parents.
Yes.
How do we get food that's nutrient dense in these kids who only want to eat macaroni or bread, right?
Right, exactly. So anyway, it's a full slate of speakers, plenty of old favorites, but lots and lots of new speakers too that you haven't heard before. And by the way, Greg Nye will be back. He's the one who wrote this article, The Devil in the Garlic. So if you have questions about what I've said and about his article, you can ask them directly.
This is one of my favorite things about the conference is that the speakers aren't cordoned off in a VIP section.
No.
They mingle around, share meals with the attendees. It's just a wonderful family feel. So you guys go to wisetraditions.org to sign up today, and we will see you in October in Knoxville. Thanks for your time, Sally.
Thank you, Hilda. Thanks for having me.
Our guest today was Sally Fallon Morell, the president of the Weston A. Price Foundation. Check out her blog at nourishingtraditions.com. And I am Hilda Labrada Gore, the host and producer of this podcast for the Weston A. Price Foundation. You can find me at holistichilda.com. And for the transcript for this podcast episode, visit our website, westonaprice.org, and click on the podcast page. And now for a recent review from Apple Podcasts. One listener had this to say: after listening to the interview with Emily Toups, I started buying the Toups Balm for faces. I am on my second jar. The product feels so good on my skin. Also, Toups has a sun protection product as well. Thank you so much for this review. And by the way, if you're curious about who has placed ads on the show and what their discount codes are, simply go to the About the Show section of the podcast on the website, westonaprice.org. And you can find under frequently asked questions the whole list of sponsors and their discount codes. I hope that's helpful for you. Thank you so much for listening, my friend. Stay well, and remember that all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well.
On behalf of the Weston A. Price Foundation, thanks for listening. We have many free resources to support you on your health journey. Visit westonaprice.org to find podcasts, articles, videos, and more. You can also find a local chapter near you for help in finding sources of great food. We invite you to support the Foundation's mission of education, research, and activism by becoming a member. Thanks again, and take care. Wise Traditions is a project of the Weston A. Price Foundation for wise traditions in food, farming, and the healing arts. The content on this podcast is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended to substitute for the advice provided by your doctor or other healthcare professional. It is not intended to be, nor does it constitute healthcare or medical advice.